And at this note, we have to throw the elephant into the room, and the most exciting debate that I've ever come across that has emerged over the last 2 to 3 years and has exploded around the world. And many people just do not want to go there, but we have to keep our minds open and discuss this. The flat earth versus the ball earth versus the flat earth, and vice versa. So remember, everything we've been told is a lie. Throughout ancient times, we've been exposed to lies and deceptions hidden in plain sight, in ancient carvings, in ancient murals, in ancient pictures. The walls, the ceilings, and the floors of ancient churches and temples are filled with advanced knowledge of sound, resonance, magneticism, and beyond. Hollywood has taken that role on today to expose the truths to us and hide it in plain sight. Many of you know this already. This is not news to anyone. Some of the best examples, as you know, are the movie The Matrix, that we are actually in a matrix. We have measured that. We have measured, Paul Cravenstein and many others have measured the energy fields around the earth, or up in the sky, should we say. Let's not say around the earth. Let's say the energy fields up in the sky, because we always look up at the sky. And obviously the Wizard of Oz, the Wizard of Gold, follow the yellow brick road that leads to the Wizard of Oz, the Wizard of Gold. He who controls the gold controls the world. And so they explain and expose this knowledge and information to us, always hidden in plain sight. And this is what I find absolutely fascinating. The Truman Show is another one of those hidden in plain sight. The whole TV show was broadcast from the world's largest stage, film stage ever constructed, this giant dome, that this make-believe reality and this make-believe life of an entire town in the Truman Show was broadcast to the outside world. And sooner or later, Truman discovered that he was in a show, that he was not free, that he was under a dome, and that there was a way out. I find it fascinating that in recent times we have a book by Stephen King that's called Under the Dome, and that book was then turned into a TV show. What's fascinating, by the way, if you look at that picture under the dome, look at that picture right sort of at the top, and you see some interesting patterns forming there. It looks like water or light shimmering on the surface of water, right? And this is Under the Dome, the TV show, the TV series. And this brings us to the maps of the world of ancient cultures. And we realize that ancient scripture in pretty much all ancient civilizations talk about this flat earth and this firmament in the sky that was created by God, or the Creator. It talks about how God creates the heavens and the earth, and how God then puts the firmament in the sky to separate the waters of the heavens from the waters of the earth. And the more you read the scriptures, I must add, the more this reality becomes more and more real. How we completely misunderstood the scriptures and how we've been manipulated into believing something that may not be so. This is a spectacular example of the firmament in the sky, and you see the stars, the moon, and the sun is inside the firmament. And there's a guy at the bottom sticking his head out of the firmament, looking out what's beyond the firmament. And that remains the interesting question, because we know that there's this energetic grid up in the sky. We've discussed this. We've measured it. We know it's there. So what is outside that energy grid? And here's this guy, the bottom left, looking out of this firmament, or the energy grid in the sky, that even the Anunnaki talk about, or the Sumerian clay tablets talk about. And he's looking up at outside our reality, and what he sees remains an interesting discussion. I'm not going to go there right now, but that really looks interesting. And you could almost, if you start reading Ezekiel, the images there might resemble something like Ezekiel describes in the Bible. And so let's look at some of the other ancient civilizations and how they depict the sky and the earth. And this is the Inca world, the Inca planet, flat earth, and the firmament around it. Here we have the Mayan firmament above the sky with the sun and the moon and the stars and the flat earth underneath it. And notice that the flat earth doesn't stop where the earth is. It actually goes and continues as a spherical form, a spherical shape underneath. And here we have a Navajo Indian firmament and the shape of the world. Again, from this dome, the firmament above the sky, to and going underneath. And we suddenly realize that this on the left here, we have an ancient Hebrew understanding of the world and our reality, and the waters above the firmament, waters of the heavens, and the sun and the moon being inside the firmament, and then the earth and what's underneath the earth, and the great deep, all one giant big sphere. And suddenly we realize that this model of a flat earth in the center with a firmament at the top and the continuation of the spherical sphere underneath is very similar to the images on the right, as you can see, of the double torus that brings energy from the top and the bottom and then expels the matter and energy at the equator, right? And suddenly we have a much better understanding how it is possible that the earth could actually in fact be flat on the surface because of the sound resonance and the magnetic fields, and even the electron model that I showed earlier, the electron model that I should put in here, that actually shows us exactly this kind of manifestation of energy and matter at the equator. And I'm not going to go into this. This is going to be for another presentation. What's fascinating even more is the fact that the United Nations map actually shows the flat earth map the same way as being promoted by the flat earth movement and those doing the research in that area. But it's even more fascinating that in January 1907, on the front page of the Hawaiian Gazette, and I think also in the Honolulu News, they featured this ancient map that was found in Tibet and then brought to Honolulu or brought to Hawaii, and they published this map of an ancient world showing the flat earth map, and outside the Antarctic wall, which is outside of the flat earth map, we see dozens of giant pieces of land. So this really poses a question. What's going on here? Who is lying and who's telling the truth here? Admiral Richard E. Byrd, who became one of United States' most celebrated explorers, and in an interview in 1953, I believe, he clearly talks. He was called the most famous explorer in American history. He was one of the few people, if not the only one, that crossed the North Pole and led an expedition. He was also a promoter of the whole hollow earth or Agartha principle. He actually claims that he somehow entered another world, another realm that seems to be inside the earth, which he couldn't explain. And then Admiral Byrd also did a major Antarctica expedition with planes and ships and a huge team of people. He had several expeditions to Antarctica, which you can go and do your own research. And then in 1953, I believe it was 1953, that he did this interview on one of the major television networks in the USA, where he very openly states that on the other side of Antarctica, now I'm not sure how you get to the other side of Antarctica, but on the other side of Antarctica, there are vast unexplored lands never seen by any human that are much larger than the United States. These are his words. You can go and watch his entire interview on YouTube that was recently released. Admiral Byrd, one of the most celebrated explorers in the United States history. And that really tells us that there's stuff going on beyond Antarctica that we don't know. And this is why Antarctica is a no-go zone and the Antarctic Treaty was signed by all the major countries in the world. No one can own it, nothing can happen there, and a number of countries have stations there that do apparently experiments and research in Antarctica. But before we finish this debate on the flat earth or the ball earth, I went into this about 2 years ago. It came to my attention. I ignored it for the first year, just like most people do. I just thought this whole flat earth movement was a bunch of nonsense by a bunch of ignorant people that are just trying to distract us from reality and what's going on. Just another distraction, and I thought there was possibly an infiltration by the elite to just confuse us. And then a year later, I started looking at it more seriously, and I thought, let me explore what these guys are saying. Let me see if there's any merit to what they say. So I was looking for some undeniable, irrefutable scientific facts that I could hook myself into. And I found that in the very simple realization that there is no curvature. And this simply blew my mind. So I urge you, those that are really struggling with this flat earth thing, the ball earth versus the flat earth, go out there, do some research, and look at the curvature issue. This is the most important scientific, irrefutable fact that will hopefully launch you on a more detailed journey of research. And this is a view from Michigan City to Chicago across Lake Michigan. That view across there, I believe, is about 40 miles. Well, 40 miles across the lake, Chicago should be completely invisible. If you use the mathematical formula to calculate the curvature of the earth, the curvature of the so-called horizon, beyond which ships disappear on the ocean, which is absolute nonsense, and you'll see why when you start to research this, we should not be able to see Chicago at all. Maybe the top of that tallest tower will possibly be seen, because from 40 miles away, that Chicago should be about 1,060 miles, 1,060 feet below the horizon based on the curvature. The formula to calculate the curvature of the earth, of the horizon, is 8 times distance in miles squared. Okay, if you don't know this, remember this. If you do research, you'll find it very quickly. 8 times distance in miles squared. So this is 40 miles. So 40 times 40 is 1,600. So it'll be 8 times 1,600, and you get the answer in inches. Do those numbers, and you'll see it's impossible to see Chicago from Michigan City if the earth was a ball, and therefore there is no curvature. No curvature from any height. As you know, I've done a lot of flying around the world, and no matter what height you are in an aeroplane, the horizon always rises up to meet you at halfway down, halfway up in the sky. The horizon is always at eye level. And there is simply no curvature. I do this every time I fly. I pick up one of these, one of the menus or something in the pocket in front of you, and I put it up against the window, and you can see it's as flat as possible. Here is another example. This Denyang Bridge in China. It's 102 miles long. In 102 miles, there should be curvature of 6,900 feet. So from the one side to the other, you should not even be able to see the other side, and yet you do very, very clearly. The more you go and do your research, the more you realize that you can see across vast, flat water space and see people walking on the beach where you should not be able to see them. So the only conclusion we can reach is the fact that you can see that there is no curvature. Here's one of the greatest researchers of our time, Auguste Piccard. Very few people know about him until you start doing this research, and you realize that the commander of the spaceship Enterprise in Star Trek is called Auguste Piccard, after this particular explorer, French explorer in 1931, that went up into space in his hot air balloon. still holds the world record of going highest in his hot air balloon. I believe he went up something like 15 miles, or was it 16 kilometers high, or 56 kilometers. I'm sorry, I speak under correction now. And when he came back, they thought he got lost in space. And when he came back after 48 hours or so, obviously he became a highly celebrated individual. And in his description that was printed in Popular Science in 1931, he states very clearly that from up there, the Earth seemed a flat disk with upturned edges. No talk of any curvature. Well, we have the physical evidence, the photographs. There is no curvature. And we're getting to the end of this presentation, which I've really enjoyed putting together because it brought into connectedness all the areas of knowledge of information from science, from history, religion, ancient civilizations, tools and artifacts, cone-shaped tools, resonance, everything, including the flat earth and the lies and deceptions of NASA. The fact that there's no curvature, people, and there is no curvature, please go and do this research for yourself. That means only one thing, that we cannot be living on a ball earth. That's the only conclusion we can reach. So that is now the conclusion that I've reached, because I have found no curvature. The scientists of today very clearly tell us that there is no real scientific evidence, just conjecture and suggestions. No scientific evidence that the Earth is actually moving through space. There's a lot more to this, a lot more. But once you open this door, just like any other door that opens the door to the rabbit hole, you will find information that will blow your mind. It will shake the foundations of everything you've been told, because it truly is the biggest lie we've been told, is the cover-up of the shape of the world we live on. And I believe that our understanding of sound and magnetic fields, as I've showed you, and how the torus shapes and the torus effect actually works of sound, matter, and magnetic effects, how that actually promotes the existence of a flat earth, of a flat piece of matter, of soil, of earth with water on it that is surrounded by an energetic field above and below. The sound, resonance, and the toroidal shape studies suggest that far more seriously than anything else. I hope this has given you some thought and insight, is that the flat earth thing is not just some crazy idea, some crazy people that want to distract us, but the fact that it actually affects everything. Our religion, our history, our science, our physics, our astronomy, our cosmology, and it now becomes the biggest lie that we've been told. So this brings us to the end of this presentation. It was more than 2 hours. It was 2.5 hours. I want to thank you for hanging around, and for apologizing for yesterday when we couldn't do this because of the power failure. The technology and the energy, the free energy, let us down. And I look forward to exploring this more, connecting more of these dots, and sharing more information. I have a lot more where this comes from, a lot more information, a lot more ideas, and as I say, the dots that are connecting. And I believe that our exploration of the stone circles of Southern Africa and what we find and measuring the energies are going to give us a lot more knowledge and a lot more understanding of what's really going on here. So I hope you enjoyed this, and have a beautiful day or a beautiful night, all depending where you are. And I'll catch you again very soon. I want to remind you that I'll be going to Brazil the first 2 weeks of December to have meetings with the Ubuntu team there, and meeting with several mayors that have already embraced the Ubuntu philosophy and our plan for one small town, that already want to implement this in Brazil. So I'll be meeting with at least one mayor and probably another 20 or 30 mayors that want to embrace and implement our one small town philosophy. that will change the world. So until later and further and the next time, have a good day and a good night.